I poured my life savings into my parents' home, believing it was our shared future. But when I refused to give their golden child brother $50,000, my mother left my son on a church's steps. He needs to learn what happens when you abandon family, she told me. They never imagined my lesson would leave them homeless. The scent of damp earth and blooming roses always brought me back to a place of peace. It was the smell of this house, the only home I had ever truly known. I knelt in the garden, my hands buried in the cool soil, weeding around the base of the very rose bushes my mother, Eleanor, had planted 2 decades ago. The afternoon sun warmed my back, and from the open kitchen window, I could hear the faint sound of my husband, Mark, humming as he fixed a leaky faucet, and the happy shrieks of our 6-year-old son, Noah, as he waged an epic war with imaginary dragons in the living room. This place was more than just wood and nails to me. It was a living archive of my life. My father, Richard, had taught me to ride a bike on this very lawn. My mother had held my hand on the front porch swing after my first heartbreak. For the past 8 years, since Mark and I had moved in to help my aging parents with the upkeep, it had become our home, too. We'd poured our hearts and a significant portion of our savings, over $100,000, into it. We'd renovated the kitchen, updated the bathrooms, and built the beautiful stone patio I was currently sitting beside. We did it all with the understanding, the gentle, constant promise that this house was our future. My sense of security wasn't just built on a verbal promise. I remember the day vividly, about 5 years ago. My parents sat Mark and me down at the dining room table, a sheaf of official-looking documents spread before them. It was a revocable living trust. "It's all taken care of, sweetheart," my father had said, his voice swelling with paternal pride. "We've put the house in this trust, and you're the sole beneficiary. This way, when we're gone, it all becomes yours without any probate court nonsense. It's cleaner this way." I had felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. It felt so responsible, so loving. I never looked too closely at the legal jargon. I didn't understand then that as trustees, they retained absolute, unwavering control with the power to change or dissolve the entire thing with the stroke of a pen. I just saw their smiling faces and trusted them completely. That trust was the story of my life. I was the responsible one, the anchor, the good daughter. And my biggest weakness, the flaw that ran through the center of my being, was a desperate, deep-seated need for their approval. It wasn't just a desire. It was a survival mechanism I'd learned as a child. I was 14 when I first tried to voice a future for myself that differed from theirs. I wanted to apply to an out-of-state art school. My mother didn't yell. She never did. She simply grew quiet, a chilling frost settling over her features. For 1 month, she treated me with a polite, vacant indifference. She'd pass the salt at dinner as if to a stranger. The silence was louder than any argument, and the lesson was seared into my soul. Compliance equals peace. Dissent equals abandonment. I ended up going to the local state college, and the warmth returned to our home. This dynamic was thrown into sharp relief by my younger brother, Leo. For years my junior, Leo was the golden child, the sun around which my parents' world orbited. He was charismatic and bright, but he danced through life, leaving a trail of half-finished projects and unpaid debts in his wake. My sacrifices were the foundation upon which his whims were built. I'll never forget when I was 22, scraping by as a junior designer. A $5,000 certification course came up that would have fast-tracked my career. My parents sighed, claiming money was just too tight. I understood. I buckled down and saved for it myself. 2 months later, Leo, then 18, wrapped my father's sedan around a telephone pole. Without a moment's hesitation, they paid $7,000 for the repairs and bought him a new gaming system to cheer him up. When I quietly asked my mother about the discrepancy, she looked at me with genuine confusion. "Clara, that's different," she'd said. "Your brother was hurting. You have to be understanding." My mother's entire sense of self seemed pathologically tied to Leo's potential. When Leo succeeds, she'd often say at family gatherings, her hand resting on his shoulder, "It shows the world what a great family we are. It's a reflection of all of us." His success was her success. His failures were temporary setbacks on a journey to greatness that she had personally orchestrated. And I, the ever-stable, ever-reliable daughter, was expected to be the silent financier of this grand production. I'd lent him $10,000 for a disastrous coffee shop venture. Money I never saw again. I'd paid off his credit card debt to stop a bank from suing him. Each time, I did it to keep the peace, to maintain the fragile illusion of a happy, functioning family. Now, as I tended the garden, a new life was fluttering inside me. Mark and I were expecting our second child, a little girl we planned to name Lily. The thought of her filled me with a fierce, protective joy. We were carefully saving, planning for her future, for Noah's future. The stakes fell higher now. My responsibilities were no longer just to my parents or my brother. They were to the little family Mark and I were building within these familiar walls. A quiet resolve began to harden within me, a feeling I hadn't allowed myself to nurture before. It was the simple, terrifying thought that something finally had to change. The change came sooner than I expected, arriving on a Sunday evening under the guise of a family dinner. The air was thick with the aroma of roast chicken and the weight of unspoken tension that had become our new normal. Leo arrived late, bursting through the door with a manic energy that immediately set my teeth on edge. He was practically vibrating with excitement, his eyes gleaming with the fervor of a recent convert. He'd found his true calling, he announced. Again, glamping, he said, spreading a set of flashy, amateur-looking brochures on the dining table. Glamorous camping. It's the next big thing. High-end, eco-friendly yurts, concierge services, the works. I've found the perfect plot of land to lease. He talked for 20 minutes straight, weaving a fantasy of Instagram influencers and massive profits. It all sounded appealing and utterly hollow, just like every other dream he'd ever sold. Then he turned to me, his smile wide and expectant. I've got most of the initial capital sorted, he lied smoothly. I just need $50,000 to secure the lease and get the first few yurts. Clara, you and Mark are doing so well. This is it. This is the one. I just need a little help to get it off the ground. The table fell silent. Everyone looked at me. My mother's gaze was heavy with expectation. My father stared intently at his mashed potatoes. In that moment, I saw a clear picture of my unborn daughter, of Noah, of Mark's tired but hopeful face. For the first time, their future felt more real than my family's past. My heart hammered against my ribs, and my mouth went dry, but my voice, when it came, was steady. Leo, I love you, I said, meeting his gaze directly. But no, we can't. We have Lily on the way, and our family has to be our priority. The word hung in the air. Our family. It was a declaration of independence I hadn't even realized I was making. The effect was instantaneous. The color drained from Leo's face. My mother's fork clattered against her plate. My father finally looked up, his expression one of deep, paternal disappointment. The rest of the dinner was a silent, agonizing affair. The next few weeks were a coordinated campaign of psychological warfare. The opening salvo was a call from my mother the next day. I don't understand you, Clara. Her voice was laced with a tone of wounded disbelief. Family helps family. That's the only rule. Is your money more important than your brother's entire future? Then came the text from my father. Your mother is heartbroken. You've created a rift in this family. Leo's voicemails were the most venomous. You always had it easy. Now that you're successful, you just want to watch me fail. Some sister. The pressure was immense, a constant, grinding weight on my soul. One night, I found myself wide awake at 3 a.m, scrolling through old family photos on my phone. There we were, smiling at Christmas at a long-ago beach vacation. Tears streamed down my face. I shook Mark awake. Did I do the right thing? I whispered into the darkness. Maybe I'm being selfish. Mom's right. What if I'm breaking our family apart? Mark gathered me in his arms, his presence a solid, calming anchor in my storm of guilt. You're not breaking it, Clara, he said, his voice firm. He reminded me of the crash car, the unpaid loans, the years of one-sided sacrifice. You're just stopping it from breaking you. His words were a lifeline. He was right. I held my ground. Months passed. The Cold War settled into a fragile, unspoken truce. Then, on a Tuesday morning, I woke up to a sharp, insistent cramping. I was a month early. Panic flared as Mark rushed me to the hospital. In the chaos of gathering our things, a critical problem surfaced. Someone had to pick Noah up from school that afternoon. Our usual sitters were unavailable. With a sense of dread, I knew there was only one option. I called my mother. Her voice, when she answered, was shockingly warm. The ice of the past few months instantly melted away. "A baby. Oh, Clara, honey," she chirped. When I asked, breathless with pain, if they could get Noah, her response was immediate. "Of course, sweetheart. Don't you worry about a thing. We'll get him. You just focus on bringing that beautiful new baby into the world." I thanked her, a wave of relief so powerful it almost made me cry. Maybe this was it. Maybe a new life would be the bridge that healed our broken family. Hours later, our daughter, Lily, was born, perfect and pink and screaming with life. After the whirlwind of birth subsided and we were settled in a quiet room, I tried to call my parents for an update on Noah. No answer. I sent a text. No reply. I called again. Voicemail. A cold, slithering dread began to creep up my spine, eclipsing the postpartum joy. Mark tried his phone. Nothing. At 6 o'clock, my phone rang, an unknown number flashing on the screen. "Is this Clara?" a calm, male voice asked. "Yes, this is she," I said, my heart starting to pound. "Ma'am, my name is Pastor John Williams. I'm calling from the Grace Community Church on Elm Street. We have your son here, Noah. He was found sitting on our front steps about an hour ago." The world dissolved into a deafening roar. The hospital room, my beautiful newborn daughter in the bassinet, Mark's concerned face, it all blurred, fading to the edges of my vision. "He's very scared," the pastor continued gently. He had a note pinned to his jacket. It says, his mother abandoned her family. She can come get him. In that moment, something inside me broke. The part of me that had spent 34 years craving their approval, the part that would have done anything to keep the peace, died in that sterile hospital corridor. And in its place, something new, something cold and hard as steel, began to form. The 30-minute drive from the hospital to the church felt like an eternity. Each red light was a personal torment, every tick of the clock a hammer blow against my sanity. I left Mark with Lily and our thankfully quick-to-arrive in-laws, my mind a maelstrom of white-hot rage. When I finally burst through the doors of the church, Pastor Williams led me to a small office where Noah was curled up in a large armchair, clutching a teddy bear. His face was blotchy and tear-streaked, his eyes wide with a terror that ripped my heart to shreds. He saw me and flew in my arms, his small body trembling with gut-wrenching sobs. "Daddy," he cried, a name he hadn't used for me in years, reverting to an infantile comfort. I was so scared. "Grandma said, she said you didn't love me anymore." I held him, rocking him, whispering reassurances I didn't feel myself. The rage I felt was so pure, so absolute, it was almost clarifying. There were no more gray areas, no more excuses to be made. After settling Noah with my loving in-laws at our house, I drove to my parents' home. It was nearly 10 at night, but waiting was not an option. I didn't ring the doorbell. I hammered on the door with my fist until the porch light flickered on and my father opened it. He wasn't surprised to see me. "How could you?" I screamed, my voice raw. "How could you do that to him? He's 6 years old." My father looked at me, his expression impassive. "You needed to learn what it feels like when someone you love abandons you," he said, his words clinical and devoid of emotion. My mother appeared behind him, her arms crossed, her face a mask of cold righteousness. "We taught you a lesson about family, Clara," she said, her voice like chips of ice. "A lesson about what really matters." As I stood on that porch, staring at the two strangers who had raised me, the rage began to recede, and something far more painful took its place. It was grief. "Kanjan du jong nu mot tam keen, and hung ben dui no, mot vuk tam qua noi dao buon de mora." I wasn't just looking at the people who had terrorized my son. I was looking at the ghosts of the parents I thought I had. I was mourning the family I'd spent my entire life trying to earn. You won't be seeing Noah again, I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper, heavy with the weight of my decision. And I want you out of my house. My father actually laughed, a short, ugly bark. Your house. Clara, you silly girl. He stepped forward, his face contorted in a sneer. This is our house. It's all in the trust, and we're the trustees. You're just a guest here. Maybe it's time you learned another lesson about gratitude. The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. The trust. The document that was meant to be my security was actually the cage they had built around me. For a moment, I felt utter, crushing defeat. I had been a fool. I walked back to my car in a daze. The grief and rage swirled inside me. But now, a third emotion joined them, determination. The next morning, I was on the phone with a lawyer. Ms. Davies was a sharp, empathetic woman in her 50s who specialized in complex family financial disputes. She listened to my entire story without interruption, her expression growing more serious with each detail. She explained the concepts of unjust enrichment and promissory estoppel. We had a case, she said, but it would be a brutal, uphill battle against the trust they controlled. A week later, my phone buzzed with a number I recognized with a jolt. Leo. I almost declined, but some instinct made me answer. His voice was frantic, terrified. Clara, I didn't know they were going to do that. I swear. I just vented to them, but this is insane. He sounded genuinely horrified. He asked to see me, and we met at a neutral coffee shop. He couldn't look me in the eye. He told me he'd gone to the house after I'd been admitted to the hospital, intending to plead his case again. But he'd arrived just as Noah was brought home by my in-laws. He saw the look on Noah's face. He saw our son, his nephew, physically flinch and hide behind my father-in-law when he tried to approach. He looked at me like I was a monster, Leo whispered, his voice cracking. That's when I knew. He confessed that he'd been at their house later that night when they were talking, gloating. Sensing something was terribly wrong, he discreetly started a voice memo on his phone. I have to play this for you, he said, sliding his phone across the table. I pressed play. My mother's voice filled the air, calm and calculated. She's strong-willed. We have to break her for her own good, so she understands her place. Once she's desperate, she'll give Leo the money. She'll have to. My father's voice rumbled in agreement. It wasn't just an act of anger. It was premeditated. It was a conspiracy to psychologically and financially extort their own daughter. The recording was the smoking gun. Ms. Davies was ecstatic. This changes everything, she said, a grim smile on her face. She arranged for a formal mediation session instead of immediately filing in court. Let's see how they react when they know we have this. We sat across from them in a sterile conference room. My parents and their lawyer were the picture of arrogance. Their lawyer smugly dismissed our claims about the money I'd put into the house. He waved away the abandonment of Noah as a regrettable family misunderstanding. A misunderstanding? Ms. Davies said, raising an eyebrow. She looked at my parents. Is that what you call a premeditated act too? And I quote, break her. She placed a small digital recorder on the polished table. Perhaps this will refresh your memory. She pressed play. My mother's recorded voice filled the dead silence of the room. The color drained from my parents' faces. Their lawyer's jaw went slack. The smug confidence evaporated, replaced by the raw, ugly face of panic. For the first time in my entire life, I saw fear in my mother's eyes. The power in the room had just shifted completely and irrevocably. The silence that followed the recording was absolute. It was the sound of a dynasty crumbling, of a lifetime of manipulation being laid bare under the harsh fluorescent lights of a legal office. My parents' lawyer, a man who had been all bluster and condescension moments before, now just stared at the small recorder on the table as if it were a venomous snake. Ms. Davies let the silence hang for a full minute before she spoke, her voice calm and surgical. Here is what is going to happen, she said, folding her hands. My client is prepared to not press criminal charges for child endangerment and conspiracy. She is also prepared to not release this recording to the media, which I can assure you would be very interested in the story of prominent community members who used their 6-year-old grandson as a pawn in a financial dispute. She paused, letting the weight of the threat settle. In exchange, she continued, sliding a set of documents across the table, you will both immediately sign over the deed to the house, free and clear, dissolving the trust and transferring the title to Clara and Mark. You will also sign this legally binding restraining order forbidding any contact, direct or indirect, with Clara, her husband, and their children for a period of 10 years. This is a one-time, non-negotiable offer. You have 1 hour to decide. There was no decision to be made. They were trapped. Defeated and gray-faced, they signed every document without another word. The act itself was anticlimactic, just the scratch of a pen on paper, but it was the quietest, most profound victory of my life. I watched them sign away the central tool of their control, the house that had been both my sanctuary and my prison. When it was done, they walked out of the room, looking smaller and older than I had ever seen them. We heard through a cousin that they moved into a small, soulless rental apartment across town. Their social circle, built on a carefully curated image of family perfection, quickly withered when whispers of the truth began to circulate. Their punishment wasn't a dramatic public trial. It was a quiet, suffocating irrelevance. They were left with nothing but each other and the bitterness of their own making. The first thing Mark and I did after the title was officially in our names was to begin the process of reclaiming our home. It wasn't just about ownership. It was about cleansing the space of its toxic history. We held a massive garage sale, getting rid of all the old furniture that held the ghosts of past manipulations. We painted the walls in bright, warm colors. The most symbolic act, for me, was tackling the garden. With Noah's enthusiastic, if clumsy, help, I ripped out every last one of Eleanor's thorny, high-maintenance roses. In their place, we planted a vibrant, sprawling vegetable garden and rows of cheerful, easy-to-grow sunflowers. It was our garden now, meant to nourish, not just to be admired. In the void left by my parents, Mark's parents, my wonderful in-laws, stepped in. They didn't try to replace anyone. They simply provided the steady, unconditional love that had always been there. They became the true grandparents to Noah and Lily. Weekends were filled with their easy laughter, with trips to the park and messy baking sessions in our newly renovated kitchen. They showed Noah what it meant to be cherished without condition, and they doted on baby Lily, healing our little family with their simple, profound decency. A few months after everything settled, I got a text from Leo. It was a notification from a payment app. He had sent me $200. A moment later, another text came through. It simply said, I know this doesn't fix anything, but it's a start. I'm sorry, Clara. The grand sum of his debts was still massive, but the small payment felt like more than money. It was an acknowledgement, an act of accountability. Our relationship wasn't healed, but for the first time, a future where we could speak to each other as honest adults, not as players in our parents' toxic drama, seemed like a faint possibility. Tonight, I'm sitting on the back patio, the stone cool beneath my feet. Mark is pushing Noah and a giggling Lily on the new swing set we built together. The sunflowers are tall and proud, their faces turned towards the setting sun. The air smells of fresh tomatoes and clean earth. It's quiet. It's peaceful. It's ours. For 34 years, I fought to keep a family together that was built on my silence and my sacrifice. I thought losing that fight, would be the end of my world. I mourned the loss of the parents I thought I had, and that grief was real and deep. But in the ruins of that old life, I found the freedom to build a real one that is smaller, quieter, but infinitely stronger, built not on obligation, but on unconditional love and unwavering respect. I didn't lose my family. I finally found it. It was the hardest decision of my life, but it was also the most liberating. Have you ever had to draw a line in the sand to protect your own peace? Let me know your story in the comments below.